The acceptance letter trembled in my sister's manicured fingers as her face drained of all color. This, this can't be right, Miranda whispered, staring at the single paragraph that destroyed everything she'd stolen from me. Hamilton Prep is withdrawing my admission due to fraudulent application materials? I watched from the doorway of her bedroom, the bedroom that should have been mine, and smiled. In my previous life, I would have been crying. I would have been the one holding that rejection letter, wondering how my carefully crafted application had been accidentally submitted with the wrong test scores. But I'd lived this year before. I'd died at 23, broken, remembering every betrayal. And when I woke up on my 16th birthday, I made a choice. Let Miranda take everything she wanted and watch her destroy herself with it. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Our mother's voice drifted up the stairs, saccharine and concerned in that special way she reserved only for her favorite daughter. Miranda's scream could have shattered glass. "Everything is wrong!" I stepped back into the hallway before anyone could see me, my heart racing, not with fear, but with the intoxicating rush of justice finally being served. This was only the beginning. Let me take you back 6 months to the day I died the first time. I was 23 years old, living in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. The eviction notice on my door was 3 days old. My phone had been shut off for 2 weeks. I had $17 in my bank account and a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering that I'd barely managed to complete after my family cut me off completely in my second year of college. The cutoff had been Miranda's idea, of course. My younger sister by 2 years, golden-haired and silver-tongued, who'd convinced our parents that I was selfish for accepting a partial scholarship to State University instead of turning it down so she could have it for her community college tuition. Never mind that the scholarship was merit-based and non-transferable. Never mind that I'd worked 3 jobs through high school to save money while Miranda spent her allowance on designer handbags. Never mind that I'd scored in the 99th percentile on every standardized test while Miranda barely scraped by with C's. "Family takes care of family," my mother had said. Her lips pursed in disappointment as she looked at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. "But you've always been selfish, haven't you, Claire? Always thinking you're better than us just because you're good at taking tests." My father had just nodded, silent and complicit as always. He'd learned early in his marriage that agreeing with his wife was easier than standing up for what was right. Miranda had cried prettily, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, playing the victim so perfectly that even I almost believed she was hurt. They'd cut me off entirely, no tuition help, no living expenses, no emergency fund. I'd worked full-time while taking a full course load, watched my grades slip from A's to B's to just pass the class so I can graduate, and emerged with a degree that felt hollow in my hands. The jobs never came. Oh, I applied to hundreds, thousands maybe. But something always went wrong. References that didn't return calls, interviews that were mysteriously canceled at the last minute, an HR representative who'd looked at me with pity and said, "Your sister called to warn us that you have some stability issues. I'm sorry, but we can't take that risk." Miranda had sabotaged me at every turn, and I'd been too naive, too trusting, too stupid to see it until it was too late. That last day, I'd been trying to figure out how to make $17 last until I could find a job, any job, even fast food at this point, when the chest pains started. I was alone. My phone was disconnected. My neighbors were strangers who'd learned to ignore the sounds from my apartment. I died on my bathroom floor, clutching my chest, 23 years old and utterly alone, thinking about how different my life could have been if just one person in my family had loved me enough to tell the truth. Then I woke up. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, in the bed with the floral comforter I'd begged my mother to replace for 3 years, to the sound of Miranda's voice singing off-key in the shower. The calendar on my desk said it was March 15th, my 16th birthday, 7 years before my death. 7 years before everything fell apart. I spent the first 3 days in a daze convincing myself it was real. I pinched myself until I bruised. I checked and rechecked dates, searched for news events I remembered, confirmed that yes, somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. The 4th day, Miranda stole $20 from my wallet and blamed it on me, saying I must have lost it. My mother believed her without question, and I realized nothing had changed. They were still the same people. They would still make the same choices unless I changed first. In my previous life, I'd fought back against every injustice. I'd argued, protested, and provided evidence that was always ignored. I'd exhausted myself trying to make them see reason, trying to be good enough, trying to earn a love that was never going to come. This time, I would be smarter. This time, I would let Miranda have everything she wanted, and I would watch her choke on it. The plan crystallized in my mind over the following weeks as I relived the patterns of abuse I'd somehow normalized in my previous life. My mother, Patricia Donovan, was a woman who'd married my father for his middle management salary and modest suburban home, then spent 20 years resenting that he wasn't a millionaire. She'd pinned all her hopes for social climbing on her daughters, but from the moment Miranda was born, beautiful, blonde, and blue-eyed while I was mousy-haired and plain, Mom had decided which one of us would be her ticket to a better life. Miranda was enrolled in beauty pageants at 3, dance classes at 4, piano, violin, French lessons, tennis, etiquette school. Our mother threw money at Miranda's development like she was investing in a racehorse. I was given hand-me-down textbooks and told that academic achievement doesn't require expensive lessons. The irony was that Miranda hated every single one of those activities and was mediocre at best. Meanwhile, I devoured every book I could get my hands on, taught myself calculus from library books, and scored so high on the PSAT that 3 different test prep companies sent me recruitment letters that my mother threw away without telling me. I only found out in my previous life when I was 19 during one of our final arguments before the cutoff. She'd screamed it at me in a moment of rage. "You think you're so smart, but you had opportunities. Those companies wanted to pay you to take their programs. I threw those letters away because Miranda needed the focus, because Miranda needed to be the special one." She'd sabotaged me from the start, and she'd never even felt guilty about it. My father, Gerald Donovan, was a more passive villain. He worked long hours as a logistics manager, came home exhausted, and let his wife make every decision about their daughters' lives. When I tried to talk to him to tell him about the favoritism or the cruelty, he'd pat my head and say, "Your mother knows best, Claire. Just try to get along." In my previous life, I'd begged him to look at my scholarship letter, to see that it was non-transferable, to explain to Mom that I wasn't being selfish. He'd glanced at it for 5 seconds and said, "If you really loved your sister, you'd find a way to give it to her." That was when I learned that weakness and cruelty often wore the same face. But Miranda was the masterpiece of narcissism. 2 years younger than me, she'd learned early that tears and tantrums could get her anything she wanted. She was pretty in that conventional Instagram filter way that our mother worshipped, and she wielded her prettiness like a weapon. Boys loved her. Teachers gave her extra credit out of pity for her difficult home life, a complete fiction. Our parents treated her like she was made of spun gold and fairy dust. She was also viciously jealous of anything I had that she didn't. In my previous life, the scholarship incident was just the beginning. When I made Dean's List my freshman year despite working 30 hours a week, Miranda called my university and filed a false complaint that I'd cheated, triggering an investigation that found nothing but wasted weeks of my time and added stress. When I got an internship at a pharmaceutical company, she catfished my supervisor on a dating app and sent him fake messages from me that were so sexually explicit he had no choice but to fire me to avoid a harassment lawsuit. Every success I managed to scrape together, Miranda destroyed. And our parents applauded her for it because in their twisted logic, I was trying to show up Miranda, and she was just defending herself. So yes, I knew exactly who these people were, and I knew exactly how to destroy them. The first test of my plan came in April, a month after my rebirth. I was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when Miranda flounced in, throwing her designer backpack onto the counter. "Mom, Claire's using the laptop again. I need it for my project." In my previous life, I'd argued. I'd pointed out that I'd reserved the laptop, that I had a major assignment due, that Miranda didn't even have a project due until next week. My mother had taken the laptop away from me mid-sentence and handed it to Miranda, telling me to stop being dramatic. This time, I just smiled. "Oh, of course. Here you go, Miranda. I was just finishing up anyway." My sister's eyes narrowed with suspicion. I never gave in this easily. But I handed her the laptop with a pleasant smile and went up to my room. What Miranda didn't know was that I'd spent the previous week installing a keylogger program on that laptop. Every password, every message, every document she worked on was now being backed up to a cloud server I'd created using a fake identity. I'd learned basic programming and cybersecurity in my previous life, taking free online courses during the rare moments I wasn't working or studying. I'd needed to understand how Miranda had hacked my email and social media accounts so many times. Now, that knowledge was a weapon. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched as Miranda used her laptop to message a boy in her class named Jake and convince him to write her entire English paper for her, promising him a date that she never intended to follow through on. Catfish, her best friend Sarah's boyfriend, using a fake Instagram account. Trying to prove he was a cheater, he wasn't, just because Sarah had gotten more likes on a recent post. Steal essay responses from an academic database that I'd deliberately left bookmarked, not realizing they were honeypot documents that tracked who accessed them. Draft dozens of cruel messages about me in her notes app, including a detailed plan to sabotage my upcoming interview for a summer internship at a law firm. I saved everything, every screenshot, every keystroke, every piece of evidence of who my sister really was beneath her pretty smile. But I didn't act, not yet. May brought the incident that would have destroyed my life the first time around, the Hamilton Prep Scholarship. Hamilton Prep was the most prestigious private school in our state, a pipeline to Ivy League universities. Every year, they offered one full-ride scholarship to an incoming junior from the public school system, covering tuition, room, board, and a stipend for books and supplies for Bornishi. 2 years. The recipient had their choice of any college prep program and essentially a guaranteed acceptance to a top-tier university. In my previous life, I'd won it. I'd submitted my application in secret, not telling anyone because I knew my family would find a way to ruin it. My essay had been about overcoming adversity and the importance of education as an equalizer. My test scores were perfect. My recommendations from teachers were glowing. I'd opened the acceptance letter in my school bathroom, crying tears of joy because finally, I'd found a way out, a way to escape my toxic family and build the life I deserved. Then I'd made the mistake of telling my mother. A full ride to Hamilton Prep? She'd snatched the letter from my hands, her eyes calculating. Do you know what this could mean for our family? The connections, the prestige. It means I get to go to a better school, I'd said, already feeling the dread pooling in my stomach. It's non-transferable, Mom. It has my name on it. Only I can... Miranda could go there. My mother wasn't listening. She never listened. She'd thrive in that environment. She's so much more social than you, Claire. You'd waste this opportunity. It's my opportunity. I earned it. Don't be selfish. Those 3 words. The same 3 words she'd used my entire life to justify every theft, every injustice, every moment of blatant favoritism. The fight had lasted for days. My mother had called the school trying to get them to transfer the scholarship. When they refused, she'd forged my signature on a declination letter. When I'd found out and contacted the school to explain, she'd told them I was having a mental health crisis and that the family was very concerned about me attending such a rigorous program. Hamilton Prep had withdrawn my admission for my own well-being. Miranda had cried and hugged me, saying she was so sorry this had happened, that it was so unfair. Then she'd gone to her room, and I'd heard her laughing on the phone with her friends about how she was glad she didn't have to compete with her psycho sister for attention anymore. I'd broken something in my soul that day, some last fragile belief that my family might actually love me. This time, I was going to do things differently. This time, I didn't apply to Hamilton Prep at all. Claire, honey, have you thought about applying to that Hamilton Prep scholarship? My mother asked one evening in early May, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I heard they're still accepting applications. I looked up from my dinner, playing the part of the naive daughter perfectly. Hamilton Prep? That's such a long shot, Mom. I don't think I'd have a chance. Nonsense, Miranda chimed in, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She'd heard about the scholarship from her guidance counselor. She wanted it, but her grades weren't good enough, even for the minimum requirements. You're like really smart and stuff. You should totally apply. I don't know. I let doubt color my voice. It's a lot of work for probably nothing, and the application fee is $50. I'll pay the fee, my mother said immediately. This is important, Claire. You should at least try. What she meant was, apply so that when you win, we can figure out how to take it away from you and give it to Miranda. I pretended to think about it, watching my mother and sister exchange a look that they thought was subtle. Okay, I finally said, I'll apply, but Miranda should apply too. The scholarship is based on merit and Miranda's really talented. Oh, I don't think so, Miranda interrupted quickly. My grades aren't really scholarship level, you know. I'm more of a people person. That's my gift. But you should still try, I insisted, putting every ounce of false enthusiasm I could muster into my voice. I bet you'd be great at the interview portion. You're so much more confident than me. I watched as my mother's face lit up with an idea. You know, Claire, that's actually a wonderful thought. Miranda, sweetheart, you should apply too. Even if Claire has better test scores, you have so much more presence, the kind of presence that elite institutions value. Mom, I don't know. I'll help you with your application, my mother continued, already planning. We'll emphasize your extracurriculars, your leadership potential. Claire can focus on her boring academic achievements, and you can show them what real promise looks like. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. Instead, I just nodded enthusiastically. That's such a good idea. We can work on our applications together. Miranda looked uncertain, but our mother's mind was made up. Within a week, both of us had submitted applications to Hamilton Prep. Mine was good, not great, just good. I wrote a competent essay about my interest in STEM. I submitted my excellent test scores and grades. I got solid recommendations from teachers. It was the application of a strong candidate, but not an exceptional one. Miranda's application, on the other hand, was a masterpiece of fraud. With our mother's help, she inflated her GPA by claiming weighted honors classes she'd never taken. She listed leadership positions in clubs she'd never joined. She plagiarized her essay from a sample she found online, changing just enough words to avoid detection by basic plagiarism checkers. She even forged a recommendation letter from a teacher who'd actually failed her in biology, using school letterhead she'd stolen from the front office. I knew all of this because I'd encouraged it. Every time Miranda expressed doubt, I'd reassured her. Every time my mother suggested a new embellishment, I'd agreed it was a great idea. I played the supportive sister perfectly, all while documenting every fraudulent claim they made. The applications were due May 15th. Results would be announced June 1st. I had 2 weeks to set the rest of my plan in motion. In my previous life, I'd been so focused on academic achievement that I'd neglected building external connections. I'd been shy, isolated, convinced that hard work alone would save me. I'd learned too late that success in life often depended more on who you knew than what you knew. This time, I was prepared. I'd spent the months since my rebirth carefully cultivating relationships with every teacher, counselor, and administrator at my school. Not in an obvious brown-nosing way, but genuinely. I'd volunteered to help teachers organize files during lunch. I'd joined the peer tutoring program and helped struggling students improve their grades. I'd assisted the school counselor with college fair organization. I'd made myself useful, reliable, and memorable, but I'd done it quietly, never drawing attention or praise in front of Miranda. I'd also reconnected with my maternal grandmother. Grandma Helen was a woman my mother had essentially cut out of our lives when I was 8 years old. After some argument, I'd been too young to understand. In my previous life, I'd only learned the truth after my grandmother died when I was 20. She'd accused my mother of showing blatant favoritism to Miranda and had threatened to divide her inheritance accordingly if my mother didn't treat both granddaughters equally. My mother's response had been to stop bringing us to visit, to screen Grandma Helen's calls, to tell us that our grandmother was too elderly and confused to be around. By the time I was old enough to reach out on my own, the damage to our relationship was irreparable. This time, I'd contacted Grandma Helen the week after my rebirth. I'd found her address in my mother's old address book, written her a letter, and poured out my heart about the favoritism, the cruelty, and the pain of feeling unloved in my own home. She'd responded within days, enclosing her phone number and a prepaid cell phone she'd mailed to my school so my mother couldn't intercept it. We'd been talking ever since, carefully, with me calling from school or the library, where no one could overhear. Grandma Helen was 72, sharp as a tack, and absolutely furious when I told her how much worse the favoritism had become. She was also a retired family law attorney with a net worth of over $3 million from shrewd investments and a successful career. I should have done more, she'd told me during one of our calls, her voice thick with regret. I should have fought harder for you, but your mother always was stubborn as a mule and twice as mean. I thought cutting off contact would make her see reason. Instead, I just abandoned you to her cruelty. You didn't abandon me, I'd said, meaning it. You didn't know how bad it was. I didn't even realize how bad it was until I got older and saw how other families worked. Well, I know now. Her voice had turned steely. And I'm going to make it right, Claire. Tell me what you need. What I needed was time. Time to let my family's own cruelty and greed destroy them from within. Grandma Helen was my safety net, my insurance policy, but the revenge had to be mine. She understood. She'd been a lawyer long enough to know that the best victories were the ones where your opponents defeated themselves. June 1st arrived with the weight of inevitability. I'd spent the weeks leading up to it perfecting my performance as the supportive sister, the dutiful daughter. I'd helped Miranda practice for her interview, feeding her answers that sounded good but were subtly off target. I'd told my mother that Miranda's application was so much stronger than mine that she was sure to win. I'd played the role of the self-deprecating older sister who knew her place. The letters arrived in the mail at 10 a.m. 2 envelopes, both from Hamilton Prep. My mother snatched them from the mailbox before I even got home from school, calling Miranda out of her room with an excited squeal. By the time I walked through the front door, they were sitting at the kitchen table, the unopened envelopes between them. Claire, perfect timing. My mother's face was flushed with anticipation. The letters are here. I set down my backpack, my heart racing despite knowing exactly what was about to happen. Should we open them? Together, Miranda said, reaching for my hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wanted me to see her win. She wanted me to watch as she took what she thought should be hers. We opened the letters simultaneously. Miranda's smile started to fade immediately as she read. The color drained from her face. Her hands began to shake. My letter was short and to the point. Thank you for your application to Hamilton Prep. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that we are unable to offer you admission at this time. We received many qualified applications and the selection process was highly competitive. We wish you the best in your future academic endeavors. A standard rejection letter. Exactly what I'd expected for a merely good application. Miranda's letter was longer. Much longer. Dear Ms. Donovan, Miranda read aloud, her voice shaking. Thank you for your application to Hamilton Prep. After initial review, your application was flagged for verification due to several inconsistencies. Upon further investigation, we discovered that your application contained multiple instances of fraudulent information, including but not limited to falsified grade point average, fabricated extracurricular leadership positions, a plagiarized personal essay, and a forged letter of recommendation. She stopped reading. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. My mother snatched the letter from Miranda's hands. This is ridiculous. There must be some mistake. There's more, I said quietly, pointing to the second paragraph. My mother's lips moved as she read silently. When she finished, her face had gone from flushed to ashen. What does it say? Miranda whispered. It says that they're reporting the fraudulent application to all private schools in the state consortium, I said, having memorized the letter in my previous life when I'd researched what happened to applicants who were caught lying. It says that this will be part of Miranda's permanent educational record, and it says that they've forwarded the evidence to our public school district for disciplinary review because she forged a teacher's signature and stole school letterhead. No, Miranda's voice was barely audible. No, this can't be happening. Mom, you helped me. You said it was okay. You said everyone embellishes their applications. I said to emphasize your strengths. My mother's voice was shrill with panic. I didn't tell you to forge anything. Yes, you did. You literally typed the fake recommendation letter yourself. The argument escalated quickly, mother and daughter turning on each other as the reality of their situation sank in. I stood there watching, feeling nothing but a distant, cold satisfaction. My father came home an hour later to find Miranda sobbing in her room and my mother frantically calling Hamilton Prep, trying to explain that there had been a misunderstanding. He read the letter, looked at me, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw something like awareness in his eyes. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "Did you know what they were putting in her application?" I met his gaze steadily. I knew Miranda was making some optimistic choices. I thought about saying something, but you always tell me not to interfere with mom's decisions. So I didn't. It wasn't quite a lie. I had known, and I had deliberately not stopped it. My father's face crumpled. He looked old suddenly and tired. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, and went to pour himself a drink. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Hamilton Prep wasn't bluffing about reporting the fraud. By the end of the week, Miranda had been called to the principal's office and suspended for 5 days for forging a teacher's signature and theft of school property. Our mother was required to attend a disciplinary hearing. The story spread through our school like wildfire, not because I told anyone, but because the teacher whose signature was forged was rightfully furious and not quiet about it. Miranda went from popular to pariah overnight. The same girls who'd followed her around like disciples suddenly didn't want to be associated with that girl who cheated. Boys who'd competed for her attention disappeared. Even her best friend Sarah, whose boyfriend Miranda had tried to catfish, took the opportunity to publicly cut ties. "I knew you were a bitch," Sarah announced in the cafeteria, loud enough for everyone to hear, "but I didn't know you were a fraud and a criminal too." Miranda ran from the cafeteria in tears. I ate my lunch calmly, ignoring the speculative looks from my classmates, but I wasn't done, not even close. The summer before my junior year was when everything truly began to fall apart for them and come together for me. In June, while Miranda was serving her suspension and facing the social consequences of her fraud, I received a letter from Emerson Scholars Academy. ESA was even more prestigious than Hamilton Prep. It was a specialized STEM boarding school affiliated with MIT that only accepted 30 students per year from across the entire country. Admission was by invitation only, extended to students who'd scored in the top 0.1% on standardized tests and demonstrated exceptional promise in science or mathematics. I'd never heard of it in my previous life because the invitation letter had been intercepted by my mother and thrown away, just like all the others. This time, I'd had all my mail forwarded to Grandma Helen's address. The letter informed me that I'd been nominated by one of my teachers and invited to apply for their full scholarship program. Unlike Hamilton Prep's local scholarship, this covered everything: tuition, room and board, travel expenses, a laptop and lab equipment, and a summer internship stipend. Graduates had a 100% acceptance rate to top-tier universities, with most receiving full rides to their school of choice. It was everything I dreamed of and more. I applied immediately with Grandma Helen's help. My essay was about resilience, about learning to value myself even when those who should love me didn't. My recommendations came from teachers who'd watched me help struggling students for months without asking for recognition. My test scores and grades spoke for themselves. I was invited for an in-person interview in Boston in July. I told my mother I was spending 2 weeks at a summer math camp that one of my teachers had recommended. It wasn't technically a lie. Grandma Helen had enrolled me in a week-long program at a local university to make my story believable. I attended the camp, then flew to Boston on Grandma Helen's dime for my ESA interview. The interview panel consisted of 3 professors and 2 current students. They asked me about my goals, my challenges, my understanding of advanced scientific concepts. They asked me what I'd do if I could change one thing about the world. "I'd make it so that people couldn't punish you for being good at something they're not," I said. "I'd make it so that success was celebrated instead of resented, so that families built each other up instead of tearing each other down." One of the professors, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair, smiled sadly. "That sounds personal." "It is," I admitted, fine. "But I think it's universal too. How many people never reach their potential because someone close to them couldn't stand to see them succeed?" I got my acceptance letter 2 weeks later on August 1st. I hid it in my room, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. That moment came in mid-August when my mother made one final attempt to ruin me. Miranda's social rehabilitation wasn't going well. She'd hoped that over the summer, people would forget about her fraud scandal. Instead, the story had spread to other schools in our district. She was tagged in Instagram posts mocking her. Her college prospects, once promising enough, were now severely damaged. She was stuck attending our mediocre public school for senior year, facing daily humiliation. My mother blamed me. "If you'd just given her the scholarship in the first place, but," she hissed one evening when my father was working late, "none of this would have happened. But you had to be selfish. You had to try to be the special one." "Mom, the Hamilton scholarship was never mine to give," I said calmly. "I was rejected, remember? And Miranda was caught because she committed fraud, not because of anything I did." "You encouraged her," Miranda shrieked from the doorway. She'd lost weight over the summer, her face gaunt and her eyes perpetually red from crying. "You told me my application was good. You said I should apply." "I said you should apply honestly," I corrected. "I never told you to lie about your grades or forge a teacher's signature. That was your choice." "You sabotaged me." Miranda launched herself at me, and for a moment I thought she might actually try to hit me. My mother caught her, holding her back. "You ruined my life." "I ruined your life?" I stood up, feeling 7 years of rage from my previous life mixing with the calculated fury of this one. "You spent years tearing me down, stealing from me, and trying to destroy every good thing I ever had. I just stopped fighting back. I let you make your own choices, and you chose to cheat. That's on you." "Get out!" my mother screamed. "Get out of this house! I want you gone!" "Fine," I said calmly. I'll go pack." I went upstairs, pulled out the duffel bag I'd prepared weeks ago, and called Grandma Helen. She was at the house in 30 minutes, her silver Mercedes looking wildly out of place on our middle-class suburban street. My mother stood in the doorway, her face twisted with rage and something that might have been regret if she were capable of that emotion. "You're making a mistake, Claire. You think you can just leave? You think you can make it on your own? You'll be back in a week, begging for forgiveness." "I don't think so," I said, throwing my bag into Grandma Helen's trunk. "But it was nice of you to make this easier. I was wondering how to tell you I wouldn't be living here anymore." "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the acceptance letter from Emerson Scholars Academy and handed it to her. "I'm going to boarding school, full scholarship. I leave in 2 weeks." My mother's hands shook as she read. "This? How did you? You can't accept this without parental permission." "Actually, I can. I'm 16 and Grandma Helen has agreed to be my educational guardian with full legal authority. You signed away your rights when you kicked me out. We have witnesses." I gestured to 2 of our neighbors who'd been watching the drama from their yards, phones out and recording. "You planned this," my mother whispered. "This whole thing. You let Miranda fail on purpose." "I let Miranda make her own choices," I corrected. "Just like you've been letting her make her own choices her whole life. She chose to cheat. You chose to help her. I just chose not to stop you." I got in Grandma Helen's car and didn't look back. Emerson Scholars Academy was everything I'd dreamed it would be and more. The campus was small but beautiful, nestled in the woods of western Massachusetts. My roommate was a mathematical prodigy from California who'd taught herself differential equations at 13. My classes were challenging in a way that thrilled rather than exhausted me. For the first time in my life, being smart wasn't something to hide or apologize for. It was celebrated. I dove into my studies with a passion I'd forgotten I possessed. Chemistry, physics, advanced mathematics, coding. I consumed knowledge like I'd been starving for it because I had been. My previous life's education had been fractured and stressed, always tinged with the knowledge that I was one financial disaster away from dropping out. This time, I could actually focus on learning. I also made friends. Real friends, not people who tolerated me because they felt sorry for me or because they wanted homework help. People who understood what it was like to be different, to be the smartest kid in the room and have that be a source of bullying rather than pride. We were all misfits in our previous schools, Here, we were the norm. My mother called twice in the first month. Both times, she tried to convince me to come home to work things out as a family. When I refused, she tried guilt. When that didn't work, she tried anger. Finally, she tried bargaining. What if we treat you better? What if we give you the attention you think you deserve? It's not about attention, I told her coldly. It's about respect. And you've never respected me. You've never even seen me as a person, just as a resource to exploit or an obstacle to Miranda's success. I'm done being your scapegoat. She hung up on me. She didn't call again. Miranda sent me messages through social media alternating between apologies and threats. I blocked her on everything. My father reached out once through Grandma Helen. He wanted to have dinner, to talk. I agreed to meet him at a restaurant near Grandma Helen's house over Thanksgiving break. He looked older than I remembered, grayer and more stooped. We ordered food in awkward silence. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "For all of it. For not protecting you, for not standing up to your mother, for choosing the easy path instead of the right one." "Okay," I said. I didn't know what else to say. Sorry didn't fix the years of neglect, but at least it was something. "I'm leaving your mother," he continued. "Filed for divorce last week. I realize that I don't like who I am when I'm with her. I don't like what we did to you, and I can't keep pretending it's normal." I felt something loosen in my chest, some knot of anger I'd been carrying. "Good," I said. "You should have done it years ago." "I know." He looked down at his plate. "Miranda's not doing well. She's seeing a therapist trying to work through why she did all those things to you. Your mother refuses to believe there's anything wrong with either of them, of course. She's convinced this is all your fault, that you somehow manipulated everyone into turning against them. Of course she does. I know I don't have the right to ask, but would you be willing to see Miranda at some point? She wants to apologize. Really apologize, not the fake stuff she used to do." I thought about it. In my previous life, I would have said yes immediately, desperate for any crumb of familial affection. This time, I knew better. "Maybe someday," I said. "When I'm ready, when she's actually changed, not just sorry she got caught. But not now. Right now, I need to focus on myself." He nodded, accepting it. We finished our meal making careful small talk about my classes and his new apartment. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. My junior year at ESA flew by in a blur of lab work, advanced seminars, and college preparation. I maintained a 4.0 GPA while conducting independent research on novel polymer compounds that caught the attention of several professors at MIT. I joined the robotics team, the chemistry club, and started a peer tutoring program for local underprivileged students. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Through Grandma Helen, I heard occasional updates about Miranda and my mother. Miranda had finished high school with mediocre grades and no college acceptances to schools she actually wanted to attend. She'd enrolled in community college, commuting from home, still living with our mother. My parents' divorce had been finalized in March, with my father paying alimony but gaining joint custody of Miranda. Not that Miranda wanted to spend time with him. My mother had been forced to get a job for the first time in 20 years, working retail at a department store. The house they'd lived in, the house I'd grown up in, was sold to split the assets. Both my mother and Miranda moved into a small apartment. The college fund my parents had been building for years, the one that was supposed to be for both daughters but had somehow always been earmarked for Miranda, had been split in the divorce, with my father insisting I receive my half. It wasn't enough for a full 4-year university, but combined with ESA's college placement program, I wouldn't need it. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, no joy in their downfall. I just felt free. Senior year began with college application season. My classmates at ESA were applying to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, schools I'd once thought were impossible dreams for a girl from a middle-class suburban family with no connections. Now I had options. My research on polymer compounds had been published in a scientific journal. I'd scored a perfect 1,600 on my SATs without even studying. I'd already lived through this once, after all. My recommendations from ESA faculty were glowing. I'd even won a national science competition, earning a $50,000 scholarship prize. I applied to 12 universities, all top tier. I was accepted to all of them. Full rides to 8. I chose MIT. The acceptance package came with a letter from the dean of the chemistry department, inviting me to join a prestigious research program typically reserved for graduate students. My room and board would be covered, plus a generous stipend for living expenses. I'd graduate debt-free with access to some of the best facilities and minds in the world. I called Grandma Helen first, sobbing with joy. Then I posted a single photo on Instagram, my first post in over a year. The acceptance letter with the caption, "Dreams do come true, MIT class of 2030. I didn't tag anyone from my old life. I'd blocked most of them anyway. But I knew somehow that Miranda would find out. She did. The message came through Instagram DM 2 days after I posted about MIT. I'd unblocked Miranda only for this purpose, knowing she'd need to respond. "Congratulations," she wrote. The word was bitter, even through text. "You got everything you wanted. Everything I was supposed to have." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "You were never supposed to have my life, Miranda. You were supposed to have your own. But you spent so much time trying to take mine that you never bothered to build yours." "That's easy for you to say now. You're the winner. You always were. Smart, special, better than everyone else. Do you know what it's like to grow up in the shadow of someone like you?" I almost laughed at the audacity. "Do you know what it's like to grow up with everyone telling you that you don't matter? That your achievements are selfish? That your existence is an inconvenience? You were never in my shadow, Miranda. You were the sun, and I was expected to be grateful for the chance to orbit you." There was a long pause, then, "I'm sorry for all of it. For the scholarship thing, for sabotaging your internships, for trying to ruin your life. I was jealous and angry, and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that." "No," I agreed. "I didn't. I'm in therapy now, trying to figure out why I am the way I am. The therapist says I have narcissistic tendencies, that mom enabled them, that I need to take responsibility for my actions instead of blaming everyone else." "That's good," I said, and meant it. "I hope you get better. I hope you find a life you're proud of. Will you ever forgive me?" I thought about my previous life. 23 years old, dying alone, destroyed by this person's cruelty. I thought about the years of suffering, the stolen opportunities, the deliberate sabotage. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe someday. But right now I need you to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting you back into my life. It just means I'm choosing not to let what you did to me define who I am." "That's fair." "I'm going to block you again now," I said. "I need to move forward without looking back. I hope you understand." "I do. Good luck at MIT, Claire. Really." I blocked her and deleted the conversation. The graduation ceremony at Emerson Scholars Academy was held on a perfect May afternoon. The 30 of us sat in our caps and gowns, listening to speeches about potential and achievement and the bright futures ahead of us. I was valedictorian, but I declined the opportunity to give a speech. I didn't need to be the center of attention. I just needed to be free. Grandma Helen sat in the audience, beaming with pride. My father was there too, at my invitation, sitting awkwardly but present. He'd been trying, really trying to build a relationship with me over the past year. It was slow and sometimes painful, but it was something. My mother and Miranda were not invited. After the ceremony, Grandma Helen took me to dinner at an expensive restaurant. Over dessert, she slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a check for $500,000 and a letter. "My will leaves everything split between you and Miranda," Grandma Helen explained. "But I've decided to give you your inheritance early while I'm still around to see you use it. This is seed money for your future. Invest it, save it, use it for grad school if you decide to go. Whatever you need." "Grandma, I can't." "You can and you will. You've earned it, Claire. Not through suffering, but through resilience. Through becoming someone worthy of success despite everything working against you." I'm proud of you. I'm so damn proud of you. I cried then, great heaving sobs of relief and gratitude and joy. My father reached across and squeezed my hand. Grandma Helen just smiled. MIT was everything I'd hoped for and more. I dove into my studies with a voraciousness that impressed even my professors. My research into polymer compounds evolved into a larger project on biodegradable plastics, with potential applications for environmental cleanup. By my junior year, I'd co-authored 3 papers and caught the attention of several biotech startups interested in commercializing my work. I also fell in love, a quiet, steady relationship with a fellow chemistry student named David, who thought my intensity was charming rather than threatening. He didn't compete with me or feel emasculated by my success. He celebrated it. We studied together, published together, and planned a future together. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in chemical engineering and 3 job offers from Fortune 500 companies. I chose a biotech firm in Boston that was doing groundbreaking work in sustainable materials with a starting salary that made my father's eyes water when I told him. At 22, younger than I'd been when I died in my previous life, I bought my first home, a small townhouse in Cambridge. Grandma Helen helped me invest the remainder of her gift wisely. My father visited monthly, trying to make up for lost time. David moved in after 6 months of dating, and we talked about marriage someday, but weren't in a rush. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply, thoroughly happy. The final confrontation came on a cold February day when I was 24. I was at a coffee shop near my office working on a presentation when someone slid into the seat across from me. Miranda. She looked older than her 22 years. Tired. Her once glossy hair was dull, cut in a practical style that suggested she couldn't afford regular salon visits. She wore a fast food uniform under her winter coat. "Hi, Claire," she said quietly. I closed my laptop. "Miranda, what are you doing here?" "I tracked you down through Dad. I hope that's okay. I needed to see you." I waited. I didn't owe her words. "I'm working at a Wendy's," she said, laughing bitterly. "Dropped out of community college after 2 years. Couldn't afford it, couldn't focus. Living with 2 roommates in a shitty apartment in Medford. Mom and I don't talk anymore. She blamed me for the divorce, for ruining our family name with the Hamilton prep thing, for not being successful enough to make her sacrifices worth it." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Not sorry enough to want to fix it, but sorry that anyone had to live like that. "I saw your article in Scientific American," Miranda continued, "about the biodegradable plastic compound. Dad sent me a copy, said you're probably going to win awards for it. Maybe a Nobel Prize someday." "That's overly optimistic, but thank you." "You have everything I wanted," she said, and there was no bitterness in her voice now, just exhaustion. "The career, the money, the respect. The perfect life." "No," I corrected gently. "I have everything I earned, everything I worked for. You could have had your own version of this, Miranda. You were never stupid, just lazy. You were never incapable, just unwilling to try. You wanted the rewards without the effort, the credit without the work. And when I succeeded through effort, you tried to tear me down instead of building yourself up." She nodded slowly. "I know. My therapist has told me the same thing about 1,000 times. I was a narcissist. Am a narcissist, I guess, though I'm working on it. I destroyed my own life because I couldn't stand to see you succeed." "Why are you here, Miranda?" "I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not the fake stuff from before. And I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I'm taking night classes again. Working on my associate's degree. It's slow and it's hard, and I'm probably going to be 30 before I finish my bachelor's, but I'm doing it. For me this time, not to compete with you or make Mom proud or any of that bullshit." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, of the old Miranda who'd cry crocodile tears to get what she wanted. I didn't see it. Just exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. "I'm glad you're working on yourself," I said carefully. I really am, but I need you to understand that I can't have a relationship with you. Not now, maybe not ever. Too much has happened. Too much hurt that can't be undone. I know. She stood up, gathering her coat. I just wanted you to know that you were right to walk away. You were right to protect yourself. And for what it's worth, I think you're amazing. I think you always were, and I was just too insecure to see it. She left before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the window. I thought about the girl I'd been in my previous life. Broken, desperate, dying alone. I thought about the decision I'd made after my rebirth, to let my enemies destroy themselves instead of exhausting myself fighting them. It had worked better than I'd ever imagined. 5 years later, at 29, I stood on a stage in Stockholm accepting the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for my work on biodegradable polymers that were revolutionizing waste management worldwide. My startup, founded 3 years earlier with venture capital and my own savings, had gone public 6 months prior. I was a multi-millionaire. David, now my husband of 2 years, stood in the audience beaming. Grandma Helen, 87 and still sharp as ever, sat beside him, crying happy tears. My father was there too, in the back, finally brave enough to be proud of me publicly. Miranda was not invited, though I'd heard through my father that she'd finished her bachelor's degree and was working as a social worker, helping at-risk youth. She'd apparently found purpose in helping others avoid the mistakes she'd made. I was genuinely happy for her, from a distance. My mother was also not invited. The last I'd heard, she was still working retail, still bitter, still convinced that her daughters had somehow betrayed her by refusing to be the people she'd wanted them to be. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the audience of scientists, dignitaries, and press, I thought about the girl I'd been. The girl who'd died at 23, alone and unloved. The girl who'd been given a second chance and used it not just to survive, but to thrive. Resilience, I said in my acceptance speech, is not about bouncing back from adversity. It's about understanding that some things, once broken, cannot be repaired and having the courage to build something new instead. I grew up in circumstances that should have destroyed me, but I learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in changing your circumstances, but in refusing to let your circumstances change who you are meant to be. The applause was thunderous. That night, at the celebratory dinner, Grandma Helen pulled me aside. "Your mother reached out to me," she said quietly. "Wanted me to pass along a message that she's proud of you. Wants to reconnect." I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even sadness. Just a vast, peaceful indifference. "Tell her thank you for the message," I said. "But no." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I've built a good life, Grandma. A life full of people who actually love me, who celebrate my success instead of resenting it. I don't need her approval anymore. I don't need her pride. I don't need anything from her except for her to stay away." Grandma Helen nodded, understanding. "You've come so far, Claire. Farther than I ever imagined." "We both have," I said, hugging her tight. "Thank you for being there when I needed you. For seeing me when no one else would. Always, my darling girl. Always." At 33, I sold my company to a larger biotech firm for $800 million. I kept a research position and a seat on the board, but stepped back from day-to-day operations to focus on teaching and mentoring. David and I had 2 children by then, a daughter and a son, and I was determined to give them the childhood I'd never had, one full of unconditional love and support. My father was an involved grandfather, trying to make up for his failures as a parent by being better for my kids. Grandma Helen, now 91, lived in a guest house on our property, sharp and loving and everything I'd needed her to be. Miranda and I exchanged Christmas cards once a year, polite and distant. She'd married a teacher and had a daughter of her own. She worked in nonprofit management now, helping disadvantaged youth access education. Our conversations, when they happened, were careful and brief. We'd never be close, but we'd achieved a sort of peaceful detente. My mother I never spoke to again. She reached out periodically through my father, through Grandma Helen, once through a handwritten letter that I returned unopened. I owed her nothing, not my time, not my forgiveness, not my success story reframed as redemption for her failures. She'd made her choices, I'd made mine, and I'd won. Now, at 41, I'm a tenured professor at MIT, running a lab full of brilliant students who remind me of my younger self. I've published over 50 papers, hold a dozen patents, and sit on the boards of 3 nonprofit organizations focused on increasing STEM access for underprivileged students. I'm writing a memoir, not about the abuse, but about resilience, about the power of choosing yourself when no one else will, about building a life so full of joy and purpose that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. My children are thriving. My daughter just won her middle school science fair. My son is a voracious reader who writes his own stories. They'll never know what it's like to feel unloved by a parent. They'll never understand the particular pain of family betrayal. And that's exactly how I want it. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I think about my previous life, about the girl who died at 23, who never got to see how bright her future could have been. I think about the moment I woke up at 16 with a second chance and the choice I made to let my enemies destroy themselves instead of destroying myself trying to fight them. It was the best decision I ever made. Because here's what I learned, what I wish I could tell every person trapped in a toxic family situation. You don't owe your abusers your success story. You don't owe them your struggle to overcome what they did to you. You don't owe them your forgiveness, your understanding, or your continued presence in their lives. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the chance to build a life so beautiful, so full, so successful that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't in tearing your enemies down, it's in building yourself up so high that they can't even see you anymore. I let my sister take my scholarship because I knew she would destroy herself with it. I let my mother's cruelty show itself without my interference because I knew the world would judge her for it. I let my family implode under the weight of their own toxicity while I built a life they could never touch. And when Miranda cried, watching me receive a full ride to a school better than she'd ever dreamed of, I felt nothing but the deep, abiding satisfaction of justice earned. That's my victory. That's my revenge. And it's more complete than anything I could have achieved by fighting back in the ways they expected. I won by becoming someone they could never touch, never hurt, never diminish again. I won by becoming free.